Finally, after all this time, we will be entering version 3.5, which will of course introduce new characters, one of whom is Hysilens, whose kit can inflict a great deal of DOT on enemies. Besides dealing a lot of DOT, her ultimate can trigger DOT, similar to Kafka's ultimate. Not only that, her ultimate can also create a zone that inflicts debuffs and additional physical DOT on all enemies. Of course, with this, she can act as both a DPS and a debuffer, right? Will the presence of Hysilens bring the DOT team back to its current meta team position? So without waiting any longer, I'm Hoyostation and let's dive right into the ultimate guide for Hysilens version 3.5. Let's do this. Do you have a character or weapon in the game that you really want but you don't have enough stellar jades? Here's a smarter way to recharge your favorite games like Genshin Impact and honkaistarrail. Look no further than Lootbar. Lootbar is the most reliable top-up platform. It saves up to 23% for all orders compared with the official channel, and it provides an 80% off for your first purchase. It's 100% safe as you will only be using your UID. We will buy pack for 3000 stellar jades for $42, which otherwise would have costed $50. Totally saving $7.5. We received the crystals we purchased in the less than 3 minutes. All recharges will be done through the official channel with miHoyo, which allows you to enjoy all top-up offers. Ready to level up your gaming experience? Check the link in the description to get the amazing discount. And as usual, before we delve deeper into the kit itself, it's best to discuss her base stats first. Hysilens has a slightly higher base HP compared to other DOT characters like Kafka and Black Swan, at 1203 points. However, Hysilens' base attack is quite low, at 602 points. This is lower compared to Kafka and Black Swan, whose base attack is above 660 points. It's truly unfortunate, but considering Hysilens herself can increase her damage percentage through one of her traces, this certainly isn't a problem. Hysilens also has the same base speed as Black Swan, which is 102 points. And this is a very common base speed considering they both need similar stats, effective rate, attack, and speed. Hysilens also has a maximum energy of 110 points, which is lower than Kafka and Black Swan. This allows Hysilens to use her ultimate more frequently, increasing her damage output. Okay, the first thing we are going to discuss about her kit is her talent called Sirenic Serenade. Honestly, this skill has an interesting effect, guys. How could it not be? The activation condition for this talent is very easy, where team members simply need to land any attack and additional DOT will be applied to the enemy. This makes teammates who can provide frequent attacks, such as Kafka's follow-up attacks, a very good fit for her. Besides providing all DOT effects, if the enemy has DOT effects, they will receive additional damage from Hysilens for 2 turns. It's important to remember that this damage is different from the original damage of each DOT. So this will result in many DOTs at the start of each enemy turn. Plus, if the enemy has the bleed status, they will receive a damage equal to 20% of their maximum HP, which is equivalent to 25% of Hysilens' attack. This means that enemies like elites and bosses will take high damage because they generally have high HP. But there's one thing to keep in mind. To ensure the enemy receives the DOT from this talent, your Hysilens must have a sufficiently high effective rate to consistently apply the DOT. Next, we will discuss her skill called Overtone Hum, Chorus After Dark Tides. Although the effect of this skill is quite simple, it cannot be denied that it has a rather interesting effect, especially the increase in damage received by the enemy. This effect can be utilized by other team members, such as Kafka and Black Swan, as it will increase the total DOT applied by team members. Additionally, this damage increase effect on enemies lasts for 3 turns, meaning as long as the enemy hasn't been defeated, we don't need to use this skill continuously and can use skill points for other team members, guys. Now we will move on to Hysilens' ultimate ability, called Maelstrom Rhapsody. The effect of this ultimate provides many benefits for both teammates and Hysilens herself. Damage from teammates will increase thanks to reduced enemy defense, and attacks from enemies will also decrease due to the attack reduction debuff effect. Additionally, Hysilens can apply an extra physical DOT if the enemy receives other DOT damage, making Kafka an automatic must-have teammate for her, as Kafka can trigger DOT effect without waiting for the enemy's turn first. Although this ultimate has a rather short duration, lasting only 3 turns, we don't need to worry too much because Hysilens has a relatively low maximum energy of only 110 points, which means she can use her ultimate quite frequently. However, to achieve this, we must use the energy regeneration rate on the rope section. I will provide a calculation table that you can refer to for a comparison between using the energy regeneration rate and not using it. In the next section, we will discuss her technique called At Ocean's Abode. Well, the effect of this technique will be very good, whether in exploration or in battle. During exploration, we can make enemies follow the created dimension, which saves us from having to enter battle and saves a lot of time. Meanwhile, during battle, all enemies will randomly receive 2 DOT debuffs, which will activate Hysilens' talent and deal additional damage from the start of the battle. Now we will move on to the traces section, guys. For her minor traces, it has a very useful effect as it can cover Hysilens' low base attack with an additional 18% attack, which will make Hysilens' initial attack quite high. As for the minor speed traces provided, they will also be very useful and make Hysilens' total initial speed 116 points, where speed stat itself is one of the important stats for her. Then the 10% effect hit rate increase will also be very useful in meeting her effect hit rate needs, because as we know, all of her attacks have a base chance that can be maximized if we have an effect hit rate of at least 120%. Okay, for the first trace called the Fiddle of Pearls. Honestly, the effect of this first trace is very good because it will indirectly provide a 90% damage increase to Hysilens if we reach her maximum effect rate. If we do a little calculation, we need at least 120% effect hit rate to get the maximum 90% damage increase and maximize the benefits of this trace. Certainly we can obtain this through the main stats of relics, light cons, and also through the substats of the relics. It's important to remember that the damage increase from this trace will directly enhance Hysilens' kit, which means all damage from her basic attacks, skill, ultimate, and talents will be increased. Additionally, with Hysilens' high effect hit rate, other buff effects like Kafka's Torture will be activated, meaning Hysilens will also receive an additional 100% attack. As for the second trace, named the Bubble of Banquet, its effect makes Hysilens' ultimate deal extremely high damage, considering she can inflict a lot of DOT through her talent and all her attacks. Furthermore, if we use Kafka alongside Hysilens, we will have 2 team members who can trigger DOT, making the resulting damage output even more lethal, especially when we consider Hysilens' very low energy requirements, which allows her to consistently launch her ultimate. For the third trace called the Gladius of Conquest, it's very useful at the beginning of the battle where we don't need to wait for Hysilens' ultimate to activate to create a zone. With this trace, we already have a zone that provides an attack and defense reduction debuff on enemies, as well as additional physical DOT from the start of the battle, which will automatically increase the initial damage of all team members. Besides the effect at the beginning of the battle, this trace will also provide 1 skill point each time Hysilens create a zone, which automatically activates when she casts her ultimate. This will certainly be very useful because the DOT team is composed of many DPS characters, which automatically requires a lot of skill points to maximize their attacks. For example, Kafka's skill must always be used to trigger DOT. And finally, we move on to the last part of the kit, which is the EIDOLON part. Her first EIDOLON, named You Ask Why Hearts Cry, has a very good effect, guys, especially for the DOT of all teammates, as it will increase the DOT dealt by up to 116% of its original damage. Additionally, Hysilens can also provide bonus DOT that can be triggered by her talent. This will certainly cause the enemy target to receive many types of DOT at once, which will automatically result in the enemy receiving a very big amount of DOT. Additionally, an interesting aspect of this eidolon is that the effects of increased DOT or added DOT applied have no specific duration, meaning both effects will persist as long as Hysilens is on the field. Interestingly, according to data I gathered from several sources, this first eidolon will provide a damage increase of up to 64% compared to her eidolon 0. This means this first eidolon is quite crucial for you to obtain, especially if you intend to maximize the damage from your DOT team for a long time. And next, for the second eidolon, named Tell Me Why Waves Roar High, has equally interesting effect. With this fourth eidolon, all teammates will increase a 90% damage boost from her trace, which will be very useful if you use many DOT characters in one team, such as a combination of Hysilens, Kafka, Black Swan, and also Jiachu. Then for the fourth eidolon named Lo How Time Flows By, the effect of this fourth eidolon is very good, because this all-type resistance reduction will make all enemies take more damage, especially those with high resistance to the element possessed by team members. Because as we know, Hysilens, Kafka, Black Swan, and Jiachu all have different types. The effect of the fourth eidolon will also make DOT teams with Hysilens usable against many types of enemies. Additionally, the duration of this all-type resistance reduction depends on the existing zones, so it can remain active as long as Hysilens still has her ultimate zone. Then for the final eidolon, named When Returned From Where You Lie, it has an effect that can strengthen the additional physical damage over time dealt by her ultimate. Now, Hysilens can inflict up to 12 additional physical DOT stacks on enemies, whereas previously it could only inflict 8. This will certainly increase the total damage by about 1/3 of the initial damage of her zone. Additionally, the resulting damage multiplier will also increase by 20%, making all physical DOT generated even more deadly. In the next section, we will discuss Hysilens' signature lightcon, named Why Does the Ocean Sing? Well, the effect of this lightcon is quite interesting, providing a very useful effect rate for Hysilens, as well as the enthrallment status, which increases the DOT damage received by enemies by up to 30% at its maximum limit. Additionally, team members attacking enemies with the enthrallment status will gain a useful speed boost to help them get their turns faster. However, there's one interesting point. Because Hysilens' skill and ultimate are AoE type, the enthrallment status from this lightcon will be very easy to apply to all enemies. What do you think, guys? Okay, as usual, we will move on to discussing the build for Hysilens itself. For the relic set itself, the best is the 4-piece Prisoner in Deep Confinement set, which is a special set for DOT characters. This set can increase attack and also grant defense ignore to the wearer when the enemy is affected by DOT, up to a maximum of 3 DOTs, providing 18% defense ignore. It's important to remember that the enemy's DOT doesn't have to be applied by Hysilens alone, so teammates like Kafka and Black Swan would be a great fit for her. Additionally, the abundance of DOT that Hysilens can inflict through her talents will maximize the effectiveness of this 4-piece relic set without any performance decline. Then, for the best planner ornament, you can use Revelry by the Sea, which increases your attack and the DOT damage you deal to enemies. Keep in mind that Hysilens needs to have an attack of 3600 in battle to get a 24% increase in DOT damage through this ornament. Anyway, for an alternative player set, you can use Pan Cosmic Commercial Enterprise if you lack effect rate to maximize her traces. Additionally, other alternatives such as Firmament Frontline Glamoth and Space Sealing Station can be used. But don't make that relic alternatives the main relics for Hysilens. Use them as alternatives while searching for Revelry by the Sea with suitable stats. Anyway, for stats recommendations, you can use here they are, guys. So, what about a lightcon that's suitable for Hysilens? Of course, the main thing is her signature lightcon called Why Does the Ocean Sing, which can provide effect rate, additional DOT damage, and speed, which is very useful for Hysilens. However, if you don't intend to get her signature lightcon, For your 5-star option, you can use Reforged Remembrance, which is Black Swan's Lightcon, or Those Many Springs, which is Jiaochu's Lightcon. Black Swan's Lightcon provides a 40% FAQ trait and also stacks that can increase attack and ignore enemy defense. Of course, these effects can be maximized by Hysilens. For Jiaochu's signature Lightcon, it can provide a really high FAQ rate of 60%, which automatically makes it easier for us to find the appropriate FAQ rate stat. Another fact will also cause enemies to take a significant amount of additional damage to the target enemy. As for an alternative 4-star Lightcon that can be used, it's Eyes of the Prey. This Lightcon can provide a 40% FAQ rate and 48% increase in DOT at Superimpose 5. Moreover, both effects remain active unconditionally, making this Lightcon a good alternative option for Hysilens. Finally, we will move on to the final part of this video, which is about suitable teammates to pair with Hysilens. The first character that pairs perfectly with Hysilens is none other than Kafka. Kafka herself is a Nihilistic character who is key to the DOT team. Who could it not be? Her skill, talent, and ultimate can trigger DOT, which is very useful for Hysilens to maximize her damage. Additionally, there are no other characters who can replace Kafka in DOT team, which means if you don't have Kafka, it's highly recommended to get Kafka first, and then Hysilens. Kafka herself has a trace named Torture. This trace can increase team members' damage by 100% if the character has a 70% FAQ rate, which Hysilens can easily achieve. The next character that pairs very well with Kafka and Hysilens is Black Swan. Before Hysilens appeared, Black Swan was already a very suitable DOT character for Kafka. However, with the arrival of Hysilens, Black Swan will undoubtedly become more popular and be used in a 3 DOT team consisting of Kafka, Black Swan, Hysilens, and one sustain like Huohuo or Aventurine. Black Swan herself offers many benefits such as Defense Shred, her DOT named Arcana, and an ultimate that can increase the damage enemies take. All these effects will be very useful for Hysilens, who can also reduce enemy defense through her zone, bringing the total defense shred to 45%. This will make the damage from her Arcana even greater thanks to Hysilens' zone. If you don't have a Black Swan, alternative support like Robin can be used with Hysilens. The attack and damage increase buff will be useful for boosting the damage of Hysilens and Kafka. Additionally, the extra turn provided by Robin's ultimate will allow Kafka to trigger DOT on enemies more frequently. Additionally, Robin can also contribute damage through her ultimate, which will certainly be useful in helping the team's damage contribution. The next character that pairs well with Hysilens is Jiaochu. But I don't recommend you use Jiaochu as an alternative to Black Swan, let alone Kafka, but rather use Jiaochu in the 4th slot and play sustainless. Jiaochu himself can inflict a debuff called Ashen Roast, which deals fire DOT to enemies. In addition, Jiaochu also creates a zone that increases ultimate damage and adds an extra Ashen Roast. When combined with the DOTs from Kafka, Hysilens, and Black Swan, this will undoubtedly cause enemies to take significant amount of damage at the start of their turn. Okay guys, that's probably all for now. What do you think about this character? Are you planning to pick up this character in version 3.5? Please type in the comments down below. And don't forget to check out my other videos because they are just as cool. Thanks for watching, stay safe, healthy, and see you in the next video.